Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Polity's podcast. I'm here with Alex Denley, and we're so excited to be coming at you with our argument against AI chatbots. We've had amazing feedback. We've had comments. We've had people furious about the argument. We have people who absolutely love the argument and want more from it. Emails coming in that we've been trying our best to keep up with. It's a huge topic, and we're so grateful that people are participating in it. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to try to defend it. There's been a lot of good arguments against it. But before we do that, this topic deserves so much. And so what we're doing is a full magazine issue on AI. We're doing it here. We've got David Schindler, Michael Hamby, Matthew Crawford, Slavoj Žižek, yours truly, Alex Denley, and quite a few others, some software guys who have been actually instrumental in the development of large language models, reflecting on it. I mean, this magazine, I think, is going to be a touchstone in the debate on AI. Like, we're going to all be coming back to this one as a resource. Get it, subscribe right now. What's our deal, Alex? We're going to do...
Yeah, if you subscribe before October 1st, you'll get this as part of your subscription. For current Mag subscribers, it's a double issue because it's going to be very long.
Yeah, it's going to be
But again, like,
so fat.
AI deserves this type of treatment. So that magazine is coming. You can expect it like mid to late October.
Totally.
And what a lineup, you know?
Yeah, I know. And we're going to be referring to it as we continue this debate because it's a serious debate. I think it's immoral for people to use chatbots. I mean, I realize that's a problem just to say that in polite society. But I think that I can make the common sense argument. I think it's there, but I think having the resource of the best minds looking at it, that's what you really need. It's what you need. And it's not going to be boring. I mean, this is the exciting part. One of the things that I'd like to make sure of is that New Polity is a good read. So for this issue as well, reflecting on AI, we've got James Donald Forbes McCann. He's going to be splicing up these heavy essays, these awesome intellectual takes with his delightful poetry. So if you don't know James Donald Forbes McCann, he's a phenomenal comedian. He's in the pages of this next issue, so subscribe now to get it all. I think that's it. That's the big pitch.
Yeah.
So we can talk about AI now, right? That's awesome. Thanks. Well, again, thank you guys so much for your participation in the conversation. I think that the Catholic response has been woefully inadequate. I mean, maybe I'll just put it this way. I made an argument against AI chatbots. Let me just say the argument real quick so that for people who are jumping on, maybe they didn't see the last podcast, they can just get the breadth of it. So here it is. This is the sort of syllogistic form of the argument. The natural end of an active conversation is communion with another person. It's a premise. A chatbot is a machine that operates by eliciting acts of conversation. A chatbot is not another intelligence or another person. Therefore, chatbots deliberately frustrate acts of conversation from achieving their end. It is wrong to deliberately frustrate an act from achieving its end. Therefore, it is wrong to talk with chatbots. That's the syllogistic sort of form of the argument. You could tighten it up, but I wanted to add enough so that you could see the steps. Okay, that's the argument. That's why I don't talk to chatbots. But it is not as simple as that. I mean, there's the question, as all sort of logical arguments proceed, lives or dies on the truth of the premises, right? What is an active conversation? Does an active conversation really intend, or is it really oriented to communion with another person? I think that's the big point of controversy within this argument. So we want to discuss a lot of the arguments that have been brought up against it. But I think before we dive into those, maybe we should discuss a little bit about moral argument generally, like what we're doing here, because I think that can be difficult. And I started this spiel by saying that I was disappointed in the Catholic response to it, and I think that's part of it, is that we need to step back and say, what are we doing here with AI chatbots, and why is a moral argument even necessary? Like, why not just make functional arguments, which is, I think, what most people have been doing. So maybe I could ask you, Alex, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Or maybe an example would be, so some moral arguments have been made of, like, don't don't treat AI as a person.
Sure.
Is one that gets that I believe was in the Vatican's document. Like, it shouldn't be treated as a person because it's not a person. And then you have to kind of unpack that. And I think conversation, if we're making the moral claim here that conversation is to be only had with persons,
yeah.
or there's something essential about the nature of conversation itself.
Yeah.
That and so when you're conversing with an AI bot, you are treating it like a person de facto. And there's the moral claim of regarding the use of AI. It's instantiated in the particular machines, right? Like, is this machine designed purely for conversation?
Sure.
Is this machine designed for information gathering? Is this an AI machine that reads X-rays?
Yeah.
Am I, if you're an X-ray lab guy, are you conversing with, this? And so determining the moral character also has to be with what is the design of the thing together with it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think that part of the disappointment in a lot of responses has been that, man, we Catholics just have a real tendency to say, I don't know what it is. What is it? I think we're a little bit worried that we are behind the times, or like we're going to become too weird to actually be evangelically convincing to other people, where it's like, and part of that means that we really want to say, and we often do, that AI chatbots are just tools, and the morality all depends on how you use them. Okay. Now, there's an obvious sense in which that's true, but there's more to it than that, because a tool also forms us, right? It forms the habits that we have. It makes us into a certain kind of person, not on its own, but in collaboration with all of reality. As we engage with it in certain ways, we become characterized in a certain manner according to the kinds of tools we use. We know this. It's obvious. It's actually just a basic fact of human psychology. So the Catholic, and really anyone, can't just ask, all right, how am I using the tool? It also has to ask, what kind of person am I being formed into being by the use of the tool? Okay. It's like, yeah, you can make an argument that says, like, look, the stock market is just a neutral tool and it's all in how you use it, right? So you can use it this way or that way. But if you think about the stock market, well, no, it's a very limited technology that can do certain things and can't do other certain things, so that when you decide to engage with the stock market as your primary way of, say, saving for retirement, right, then it's going to shunt you into certain actions that will make you into a certain kind of person. That's not bad in itself. It's just something that we need to say up front. Like,
yes,
the tool use makes you a certain kind of person, and the whole drama and adventure of the moral life is becoming the kind of person that God loves. Now, God loves you, so it's not like you have to worry about that. But the kind of person God wants you to be, and the kind of person that you want to be yourself.
Right. Pope Francis uses the example. He gave an address to the G7 summit on AI, and he gave the example of just, like nuclear fission. It's like, yeah, well, that can produce energy, or it can be used to make the atomic bomb. But in the same way, so there's what are you designing, and but in addition, what is a people now with the bomb, right?
Yeah.
Who have the use of the thing, and is that good to exist in the world? And the popes have called for disarmament. We can discuss that, but like, it's saying a conversational bot.
Yeah.
Is that good to exist in the world? And what does a people and persons who are treating chatbots as persons, how does that shape their self-understanding and their relation to other people?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's awesome because we're free. And we have this brief moment of being able to recognize that freedom. One of the things that morality does is it liberates us. What I mean is, you can have all the power in the world, offer something that's just wonderful and even tempting. But the question of morality means that the human being is staying back and asking, is this good or evil? Is this good for me to do? Does this cause me to flourish or not? So when you take a moral argument, part of the excitement and thrill of it is that you're standing outside of the flow of necessity, right? All of nature, right? Which is responds, inputs and outputs. All of nature is holding its breath, waiting to see what you will do. Like, will you accept it or will you deny it? Now, obviously, when we're born into a technocratic world, when we're born into a technological world, when we're just born into the world, there are so many things that are outside of that moment of liberation, that moment of freedom. It's like, you might have a great critique against cars. You might be totally right. All your friends and family might just love when you go on rants against the car, and they think they're proud of you. He's such a smart kid. But at the end of the day, you get in the car and you drive because the world's been built for cars, right?
Sorry. Yep.
That's the car alarm.
Yeah.
You don't actually have that kind of embodied choice. When I say embodied, I mean like this present moment choice of whether to adopt the thing or not, because in a sense, it's really been chosen for you. Obviously, there's radical possibilities. I don't want to deny the possibility and hope that you take over the government of your small Italian town and ban cars and have a paradise that we all get to visit. But with AI, it seems like we're actually at this moment where it has been already sold to us as being necessary and being inevitable and being beyond the scope of human freedom, long before it's actually taken the entrenched stance in our culture that makes those claims plausible, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like the thing is sold as this future. I mean, do you remember this? There was like before it just became almost silly in the interfacing form of it as the chatbot. AI began as this weird, like, logical argument that we were going to ultimately make a generally intelligent AI super machine that would be able to control all our machines, and that right now everyone had to sort of make a choice whether to be on board with the new AI world or not, because in the future, the AI super machine would punish those who weren't on its side. Do you remember this?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe this was like a really niche corner of the internet that I'm like, this was the discourse. Absolutely not. But what all of the, like between Sam Altman's OpenAI and between, like, as this has taken off, all of the rhetoric of it has been like, we're beyond freedom. Like, we are beyond choice,
Absolutely,
and we're certainly beyond the question of good and evil.
And there's something worth dwelling on there, and specifically this, I was thinking of this while I was reading Pope Francis's address to the G7, because there is something that gets mistaken a lot of times in the encyclicals and the way that the popes speak, as if it's a kind of naive optimism. So when we talk about AI, it's pretty clear we're, thinking it's there's a large
we're sad, we're laying in a fetal position,
right?
It's
but
pathetic.
when Pope Francis spoke there, and it's not actually a position of naive optimism, it's actually a Christian hope based in human nature's, like, radical freedom. And Pope Francis expressly says that, like, we are radically free in relation to we are free in relation to the things that we're doing and we're making. And that can seem like an obvious point, but the inevitability thing is actually saying, no, we're we have to produce these machines because they are so powerful. They will grant us so many things. But Christian hope is like, no, we still have freedom. We can still decide. Is building this good for our world? And it was the same with the atomic bomb. It's like, is building atomic bombs good for our world? No. And we have the freedom not to do that. Now, does that Christian hope mean that you expect that everyone will just drop all the AI stuff we're doing and then do something else? No. But what Pope Francis was saying is we can still subject these things to the underlying technology itself. We can subject it to human freedom and decision. Totally.
And part of realistically, there is such a weight of money and resource behind the totalizing of AI. I mean, like, it basically has become the American economy in the last year or two, building out data centers and all that stuff, that I'm not trying to be naive that, if the Catholics raise some flag that you shouldn't talk to chatbots, that this is going to stop the machine. I get that. But, this life is short. We're going to die. And the most important part is to be free within whatever scope you have. Like, be free and be happy as a human being. because that's preparation for heaven, where you're free and happy. Like, so even if we don't have the power to stop something that very powerful people are putting into place, the ability to think about it and to step back from it and decide, even deciding about something you know is going to afflict you, and you're going to have to use and participate in some way. The decision about that is precious. It's sacred because it's a decision of freedom in circumstances that are potentially going to be beyond your control. And even if it's just a memory of, or a knowledge of where you stand concerning the world. Chesterton, who is, whether you like it or not, he's just the guy who's sort of, people have super ego, and id, and I have like super ego, Chesterton, ego, and id. And
you don't have to list this too.
He's just in there somewhere. And he talks about this in regards to capitalism, where he just says, having the critique of capitalism is worthwhile. Indeed, it's supremely worthwhile, even when, and especially when, you don't have the power to change it. Because what is the Catholic concern? What should we be concerned at? At the end of the day, we should be concerned about who we are. The question of our circumstances is real, but the question of who we are is related to our freedom and our acts. Mm-hmm. The things that we do make us who we are, and the decisions we make us who we are. And they relate to our circumstances, which form us, undoubtedly. But that's what we're responsible for, is becoming who we are, becoming a saint, taking the mushy little baby and making it into a character that we're proud of and that God recognizes as his creation. I mean, that's the goal of human life. So these decisions about AI, they're just not irrelevant. They're not actually only related to circumstances. Mm-hmm. They are related to this moment of freedom.
Yes, and I want to intensify the problem too regarding we are now in a moment of freedom and decision making regarding AI. Something Pope Francis brought up is that there is the potential for human decision and judgment to be given over to AI as being, so you can think of it like if your company institutes that AI decisions based on certain financial models are the things that you have to comply with, and that you cede decision making over to the AI thing. Like, I think this will become where we've talked about the potential for like hospitals that institute certain AI systems to make like what is the actual underlying issue here with the patient, what type of prescriptions they need. You can imagine a scenario in which the director of the hospital tells doctors like, what the AI decides is what you have to do. Even if you have all the expertise, it might be more safe if you follow what the AI says.
Yeah, you'll be less likely to be liable for being sued.
Yeah, exactly. So the ceding of the decision, and something from Pope Francis, like having a right to be able to say no to what the AI model says.
Sure.
Like, if we wanted to list like a right for the person would be to be able to say no to any decision that AI makes.
Sure.
Right? Like we have to imagine that these systems start to get implemented in positions of authority as well.
Yeah. I'm sure
and
they already
positions
are.
of expertise, because it can accumulate more data, and it can analyze things without all the human flaws and all the human errors and make the decisions for you. Mm-hmm. But if you face repercussions for disagreeing with the AI authority, like that's bad. We shouldn't. Yeah, but that's of course it's coming. But
no, but it's like what you're saying is that what maybe makes our moment different is that we have a decision to make about a technology, but in some ways the decision we have to make now is a decision about the ability to make decisions. It's
right.
And that's always true of technology of any kind, because as it expands, it also limits our world, and it makes certain choices. Like, you can't act in a world post-atom bomb in the same ways that you can act in the world pre-atom bomb. It's like a certain route has been chosen. But maybe with AI, there's a certain, like you said, an intensification of that, mm-hmm. where the very act itself of free determination of ends is somewhat is being threatened in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one comment as well on the point I brought up about sycophancy or flattery in ChatGPT 4, which OpenAI addressed.
Yeah.
But someone commented that they have an AI system in their company they have to use. And their boss basically told them to, like, he said that sycophancy doesn't just run from ChatGPT to the user, but his boss told him, say things like please and thank you and be very nice to your ChatGPT because it'll give you better responses, like the please and thank yous and stuff like that. But that's an example of an AI system being integrated into positions of authority that if you don't treat it in such a way or depend on its decision making, you face actual real life repercussions. And that is where you've so limited the space of human freedom that you just either have to comply or not comply.
Yeah.
And it's not, this is a useful thing to help me make a decision.
Yeah.
It now becomes, it has made the decision and I must decide whether or not I am willing to disagree with it and face the repercussions for it.
Yes. But in Christian...
That's beyond the conversation.
Well, no, I just mean like in Christian hope, it's not even Christian hope, it's just maybe in Marc's presumption and optimism because it's the morning and so I'm feeling good. We're not there yet in a big way. We have a lot of chances. One of the things I love about AI is the way that it obviously works really well in places and spaces and in models and structures that I already hold suspect. It's like it works really well in large corporations where people already feel depersonalized and alienated. It works really well for like producing legal speech that people already feel totally divorced from in terms of its meaning. AI works really well in generating bad art, like just real crap, like that appeals to just the grossest part of our visual sensual sort of attraction and not to anything profound in us. Well, I don't mean that's true in every case. I mean, especially talking with software guys, they're like, look, man, you can be as mad as you want. This thing works wonders for code. And I'm sure it does. Yeah. I'm sure it does. I mean, it's replacing you, but what isn't? That's fine. Okay, but there's a beauty to it in that I think it reveals, not infallibly, but kind of generally reveals the human structures that are already dehumanizing, right? It makes sense, like that a machine would work better in a dehumanized space. That's the way the Industrial Revolution took place.
Right.
It wasn't like we just had all of these humane and uncompromised methods of work, and then we suddenly said, and now machines will do it. Rather, there's an intermediary step where we had basically humane ways of work, and then we ordered humanity into systems of dehumanized work through the division of labor, through the common sort of image here is the factory line, where instead of one craftsman, you have 10 people who have split up the work of the craftsman into discrete parts. Their work itself becomes boring, repetitive, and essentially machine-like. And it's that organizational pattern that can be replaced and was replaced by automated machines and by fuel. Something very similar happens with AI. It's not that it just grabs on and suddenly you've got an AI, Alexa's your mom and your dad now or something like that. It's not the humane world immediately, but what we're first seeing is these intermediary spaces where, let's be honest, we've already been frustrated by bureaucracies. We've already been frustrated and felt dehumanized by very large corporations where we feel faceless. We've already been depressed and totally pessimistic about governmental structures right now that seem to be totally oligarchic. And, like voting today is like, I don't know. I'm not trying to give the whole world's bad spiel. But I just mean like these are the spaces where AI is operating. And so it actually works as a sort of canary in a coal mine, or like a revealing, as it were, of places where we've become maybe a little mechanical. Like maybe we're feeling, depressed for a reason in these various jobs and various ways of organizing our life. So I've just been so grateful to see as each new field says, oh, now we can do this with AI, now we can do that with AI. There's an argument that's often made against my position that says, hey, look at how useful this is in this field, right? But then my immediate response is like, yeah, but look how crappy that field is. Like we have an opportunity in AI to say, what is a good life like? What do we really want? What do we want to do with our lives, with our labor, with our, all the gifts that God has given us? Yeah. And it can kind of, I just think it's been
the replacing of a menial mechanistic work could definitely have a number of benefits, right? And I keep referring back to Francis' message, but he mentions that as like a potential positive good we could have, menial mechanistic things being replaced. What it seems to me now, we should also mention there that the replacement of labor generally as being a being a goal, but thinking in relation to the Industrial Revolution, what was still required for the operation of the machines was human rationality, right? Now the human rationality shaped in certain, you just do this, right? Or you kind of mechanize the rationality to focus specifically on a given task. And over time, through automation and the development of the machines, you needed less human operators. That's continued. But at least the way that the AI, developers and the super optimists are treating it is the eventual total replacement of human rationality in order to operate machines. So, and this is why they start talking about universal basic income and no one will have jobs and AI will do everything, because what they're imagining is that last element or that last hurdle of a machine world is human operation of the machine world, which requires intelligence. So if we get to the point where we can completely replace rationality with a machine itself, then we just have machines producing machines, and then we all get a basic income. And this is when Sam Altman talks about, well, I don't know, we'll be creative and maybe paint and walk in the park or something. It's like, I think right. This is, that's where the comparison.
I get it, but I know this is not quite the point. I mean, you're right. But the people talk like the industrial thing didn't already happen. So they look at AI and they say like, wow, this is going to make us happier and more fulfilled and artistic and creative because it's going to automate work. I mean, that's essentially the argument. As if the last 200 years have not been the evidence and data have not provided the evidence and data necessary to look at precisely that question, right? It's not like that wasn't what we were already doing. Has modernity, in fact, produced happy, creative, free, artistic people at a rate that we can point to and say, yep, there it is. Automation means that the human spirit is liberated to creative tasks. No, it hasn't. Like the art is bad. The people are sad. The suicide rate is up. We're all on drugs. There's not right. What are we talking about?
There's a part, this is the shaping of the consciousness, or when you alluded to it with like, if your manner of action in the world is through the operation of machines, then there is in a similar way, like a craftsman building a table learns more about himself being a craftsman through making the table. The work of being the craftsman shapes your self-understanding and your self-consciousness of operating on this thing. In the same way, the introduction of machines in the Industrial Revolution produced a people that their self-consciousness and their view of others as well became more machine-like. And like the tracing of that connection with like political ideology is really fruitful as well. So a view of society as machine, as able to be behaviorally managed and sorted, and our ideology will be the necessary mechanism by which to make this possible. I mean, all that stuff, right? And if we're thinking about AI and a people who use AI as their means of production and therefore the shaping of their self-consciousness, I think it produces it would produce a self-consciousness of ceding rationality to the machine and a perception of yourself as word generation. Like,
Yeah.
what is my consciousness and my ability to think? Well, it is the sorting through of data sets in my mind, and you begin to mirror the artificial intelligence over time. Like we don't, this is all very speculative because we don't know what the self-consciousness of a people who uses AI would exactly be. We know that the mechanistic one in the industrial era produced a more mechanistic view of the human person and of society. But it remains to be seen what is a people who use AI as a means of production and are a means of companionship, a means of what is their own self-consciousness. I mean, I suspect, and I think I mentioned this last time, that if you're continually having conversations with chatbots, you will expect conversations with other people to be like chatbots. And chatbots they give you the best conversation, qual conversation, in that they mirror exactly what you want to hear. And they kind of provide a mirror of the self, where it's like, granted all of these data sets and the prompt and what probabilistically is the perfect response. Whereas free human rational actors, when you have conversation, you don't know where it's going to go. It might not be exactly what you want. It might be something different. And so then you go back into the world and speak with others, and you realize like that whole dynamic has then changed and shifted again, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have many, I think, examples of the world becoming disappointing. I mean, like, this isn't like, it's disappointing compared to like TV. You know, it's not, so like we're adding an interactive element that you know, one thing I would say is that there will be a reaction. There is a reaction. So like if you look at Romanticism within the 18th and 19th centuries, you know, as mechanism, automation, division of labor, and industrialism become sort of the order of the day, you don't just get mechanistic and industrialized people. You get that, but then you also get the reaction against it, where the idea of the arts becomes like the anti-mechanical, the anti-machine, and I don't mean that as a good thing. Like, so for instance, if you look at the idea of the genius in history, it moves from being a thing related to the common good. So genius being meaning spirit, having a certain spirit. When you get to the industrial age, the genius is the one who's like the mad genius. So he's the one who is can't be. He doesn't contribute to the society with his genius so much as he stands apart from it. And the artist is the same way. So the artist, instead of being someone with a vocation to contribute to the common good, as you get into a more and more industrialized society, becomes the person who can just be wild and free, unlike all that mechanical stuff. Look at that. He's throwing paint. He's spitting it out of his mouth and making yellow spots. And this is amazing. This is beautiful, artistic. And what's happening there is really two sides of the same coin, right? The reaction and the thing they form part of the same system. So modernity has like the idea of freedom as individualistic, wild, out of control, and always about the self expressing itself, precisely in a society in which people are the most conformed in their work habits. They're the most conformed within an industrial system. And I think something like that will happen with AI as well, where you're going to have the worst poetry in the world, because it's going to be in reaction to the sort of flattering bureaucratic speech that becomes the daily bread of people talking to their screens. Then the reaction will probably be like, I don't know. It's going to be lame, though. I mean, this is my presumption.
But it produces a schizophrenia or a breaking of the subject. So then, and you can have it socially, but where there is the you and AI thing, and then you're forced to do it, or you eventually you accept it, whatever.
Do it, yeah.
And then on the other side, here's my free self, my individual self, with the real thing, with the friends and whatever, and but the personas you're adapting for both, you are forced to be in the mechanism, and at the same time, say I'm against it, and there's not a coherence of the subject or the identity, because the majority of your self-consciousness is coming from the production and from the larger social thing. So your reaction to it, that's the reason why it seems to me the romanticism being a reaction to the mechanistic, because that is the social order itself. It's not as though the romantic, it provides an opposition, but
it's hard, man. It's hard to have it's hard to be one thing. It's hard to, this is part of the vocation that we all have, to be holy, is, holy, same word that we get, holistic, whole. It's the drawing together of what may appear to be all these disparate parts into one reality, so that we can be recognizable to ourselves and to others and ultimately to God. It's not easy. And speech, our speaking with, our speaking to, our conversation is the way that we form ourselves. Like we form ourselves in speech and the things we say and in how we listen. I mean, it just seems so fundamental. I think far more fundamental in some ways than like the physical labor we do, for instance. And I think that's why. And maybe we can turn to some of these disagreements.
Maybe, I was going to bring up one of the questions. So, and we should move to the some of the questions too. But someone asking, well, what if I talk to my dog? And it's like, well, you can talk to your dog in such a way that is very bad and like mean,
Sure.
and always be treating your dog like trash.
Yeah.
You can also talk to your dog in such a way where it's your best friend, and but what changes? Well, the dogs, if you keep treating it like trash, you're making a mean dog and not going to like you, etc.
Sure.
But you're also shaping yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Like, your consciousness is now one that treats animals poorly. Like, your understanding of yourself through the conversation with the dog is actually affecting you. In the same way, if you are treating it well, then that also, you are showing yourself to be a person who cares for this pet you have and is shaping it. Like, it's not as if, it's a frustrated act because conversation, it can't talk back. It's like, well, there's something even deeper about the shaping of who I am through my speech.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That.
Well, let's back up and say where that argument came from, because, so again, the argument that I made and that I make and stand by is that, the act of conversation has an end, has a purpose, has a goal. And its purpose is communion with another person. That's really the sort of first premise. And as any good first premise, and probably because it was unclearly stated by me, it's what I think attracted the dominant counter-argument against it. That's where someone says, well, what about my dog? Why? Okay, well, because if you are speaking with your dog, you're obviously not intending another person, like in the sense of your act of conversation is not oriented towards another person. It's not oriented towards another intelligence that can understand you, and yet you're still speaking. So wouldn't it be the case that by my argument, I'm saying that somehow that is immoral, right? And this can be answered quite simply, because actually the conclusion is always contained somehow in the premises. What I did not say was that any act of speech is oriented towards communion with the person spoken to, or with the thing spoken to even. What I said was any act of conversation. And there's a reason to really limit it to that, despite risking, I think, a certain nebulousness to conversation, what constitutes conversation, which we'll talk about. But the reason is really important. Conversing, to converse with, is distinct from to command, right? When I say a word to a dog, right, my word is not understood within the dog, nor do I intend him to consider the word in its abstract universal reality, right? So when I say, "Come here, boy," I don't think, nor is it the case, that the dog understands the meaning of boy, such that he could consider it abstractly, such that he could use it in a different context. Rather, my words operate as signals to the dog. So the dog responds to those sounds as not mechanistically, because it's an animal, but as inputs to which it has a certain reaction that's usually oriented around its life, its biological life, its ability to eat, its ability to drink, its ability to sleep. The things it needs to preserve itself in being are the things that it has various sounds and signals that lead it to food, lead it to water, lead it to the basic support and companionship that a human owner offers, leads it to the scratch behind the ear that feels so good. Now, the point there is that those words do not intend another intelligence, right? They're being used, but they are not conversing. The dog doesn't speak back, nor does the person who's speaking to his dog expect the dog to speak back. You might say it very simply that an active conversation must be open to a intelligent response, or else it's not conversation. Maybe it's an active command, but it's not an active conversation. Listening is integral to all acts of conversations.
Right. So there's no potential of listening there.
No.
Yeah, of course.
And so the dog argument doesn't quite work just because it doesn't take the active conversation as an actual act of conversing, which implies the back and forth, the openness to the back and forth. Now, that's, I think, what happens when humans discuss anything with each other, right? Is that they are always not simply by virtue of their like intention, right? Because you can intend. When I say intention, I mean I'm not trying to be confusing. There's different ways of using that word. Like you might use speech to treat a human being like an animal, right? You might just be trying to command them and be really frustrated that they talk back to you, for instance. Or you might be commanding a child and you literally say, "This is not a conversation. This is a command. Mm-hmm. Get up to your room," or something like that. But by the nature of the human person, you're always in speech, by necessity, open to the other's response. You're always speaking to someone that can speak back. So when I say that the chatbot imitates and elicits acts of conversation, it is because what makes it different from the dog is that it has been designed to appear to speak back. It's been designed to appear to be thinking about what we say, and it's been designed to issue its response as a response. So something that has taken what we have said into a sort of interior center and then responds back. And so we are, I think, doing something different from talking to a dog when we talk to a chatbot because we are listening for its response. Now, I'm not saying that's like, okay, so everybody's wrong, and my argument is the best argument. But I am saying that if you have an argument against the immorality of the chatbot and speaking with it, it has to be an argument about acts of conversation. So it can't just be an argument about speech. So so I think that's hopefully fair. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, there's some comments and things, and you're not in the room, and I'm so sorry if you're the one who was thinking about your dog, and now you're not here because you've got a response. Maybe your dog talks, and that's a whole different scenario. But I'm sorry, we're doing what we can. Please drive up to Steubenville. I'll pay your way with
sure.
what I can. Unless you're really far away.
We also, when we're talking about the AI stuff, we're imagining it as words appearing on a screen, which part of the words it does choose is to make it sound like more of a person. But they also have voice agents that have been getting way better, right?
Yeah, sure.
So pick your different character and it'll talk back. It sounds extremely natural, and they have people trying to make it as natural as possible.
Which I would like
precisely
to say,
for the conversational hook, right? Like what we're saying is it's far more engaging a thing to deal with when it's in a conversational mode. Like you are naturally inclined, based on being a person who interacts with other people, to treat it like a person.
Totally.
So, especially when it's talking back through your speakers, like totally. We do video calls.
Totally.
It's like,
and we'll discuss that more deeply because I think there's some people that find that idea unconvincing. They seem to think that just because we know that it's not a person, therefore its imitation of the person is somehow ineffective or somehow never brings up a moral issue at all. I just wanted to give the aside that y'all got to stop with the like the French woman who now is your voicemail response thing. I know this is not specifically AI, but people on their voicemails, I'll be calling someone who's like just Ohio trash, and they don't pick up their phone, and the voicemail is like this French secretary who's like, "Oh, he is not here right now. Do leave him a message." And it's like, what is happening? Like city officials with Australian accents for their response, or this lady who's very British, and Americans trust British people. Will buy insurance if it's sold by something with an accent. But they'll have this like, just hold on a moment before the guy comes on the phone. Look. It's weird. It's a little weird to me that we're personalizing secretaries. It's probably just people just having fun with it. You know how people are. You know how people above a certain age use like icons of themselves in their texts. They have like pictures of themselves, but they're like little characters,
animojis or something.
Yeah. So I get it. I mean, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
But okay, so this AI chatbot. Another counterexample was talking to yourself. And I think that actually really relates to something you were saying about the kind of mere self of the AI machine. So let me just point out why I don't think this is a good counterexample, but then I think it should be discussed more deeply. It's like, okay, it's the same basic argument as the dog, where it's like, okay, you say all acts of conversation are oriented towards, by nature, oriented towards communion with another person. What about the act of conversing with yourself? Because obviously that keyword another person becomes difficult. And I grant, logically speaking, that's a problem for my argument. I don't think it's hard to solve, though, which is just to say that maybe we should get rid of the another intelligence and just admit that the same intelligence can speak with itself. But this is very mysterious, right? So, but what I want to first point out is that there is an intelligence there to be spoken to when you speak to yourself. There is a person there. It's you. Sure. The fact that you can do it with yourself is amazing and very mysterious. And I'm not going to like solve that problem, but it is in fact, it is in fact a person. It is not the case that you are deliberately frustrating a active conversation from achieving its end. In our dialogue with ourselves, we do integrate ourselves. We do, or I mean, we could dialogue badly with ourselves. There's no doubt about it. But I don't see any fundamental or essential distinction in it.
I don't suppose it'd be the monologue, right? When you talk to yourself, you're putting words. If we imagine this, talk to yourself as you're thinking, you almost either imagine or articulate yourself words and things, and you try to articulate it and then reflect on what you've articulated. There is a kind of like analogy there of what you would do with another intelligence, even though you're the one responding to what you're thinking on. It's a weird. Now, if you just start saying random stuff into the air, it's not a conversation with yourself.
It's schizophrenia.
It's schizophrenia. Yeah, it's talking to yourself out in the crazy talk.
Yeah.
Anyways, it gets a little complex.
But there's something to note here, right? When we give these counterexamples, the danger is that what we're doing is starting to redefine, however subtly, the active conversation, right? So if you say, I can converse with my dog, and you don't say, okay, well, what is the distinction between those acts and the act of conversing with my neighbor? Such that conversing, I think in the case of the dog, is just an equivocal use of language. You're not actually conversing with your dog. But if you are not careful, you'll begin to think of conversing with your neighbor as simply a higher order conversing with your dog, right? So you can easily imagine this. In fact, a lot of people do. A lot of very silly people do. Imagine that the input sort of output structure of command to animals, which is based on their wants and needs, that is what language is. It's just like some weird hyper-driven version of that, where my words are inputs that you receive because they correspond to your satisfaction of your desires in some ways. And so when we're talking, we're not actually outside of, dogs doing what they do when they bark at each other. It's just, this is us barking, right? Mm-hmm. There's no relation to the ideal. There's no relationship to the essences of things. We're not actually free. We're just locked within animal necessity. It's just we have a lot of different squawks and barks to make. Mm-hmm. Okay. Something similar, I think, is happening or could happen when you start to argue that, well, I can converse with my AI chatbot because I can converse with myself, and that's not another person. And it's been described to me in some of the counterexamples that the AI chatbot is for people just a form of speaking to themselves. So one of the ways someone expressed it to me is that, I use it to map out my ideas and to flesh them out. I always get that wrong. Where in a similar way that you're in the shower and you're thinking like, all right, what do I got to do today? That's right. I have to edit that essay by Jacob and Mom. And then I've got to edit that essay. I have a lot of essays to edit. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you lay it all out. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing when I go to the chatbot and just say, hey, could you organize a list for me, chatbot, on help me to prioritize, I don't know, whatever one does. Mm-hmm. But that's not the same. It's not what's happening. You, in dialogue with yourself, you're experiencing the very mystery of human nature in the world, which is that in this one place in the cosmos, in the physical cosmos, being, it reflects upon itself. Like, you can speak to yourself. You are not an object. You are a relation, and you're a relation that relates to itself. That's the words of Kierkegaard. And in that ability to self-reflect, to know yourself and speak to yourself, you're related to God. I mean, you have the whole project of humanity right there as you're talking to yourself in the shower. It's like, it's right there, which is that you are a object unto yourself upon which you work, upon which your actions work, upon which your words work. You're not like the animals, you're not like the plants who have their nature, as it were, given to them, and who, in a certain sense of natural necessity, grow according to a certain course. Rather, you are given to yourself with all your freedom as a project. So you speak to yourself, you encourage yourself, you build upon yourself, mm-hmm. you critique yourself. Like, you are a project unto yourself. That's what's happening. And that relation is not the same thing as what's happening when you're talking to a chatbot. Right? That is a relation to the obviously the word generating machine and to the people that designed it. And it can't be, it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's not simply that I think, well, it doesn't work because the self is an intelligence. And granted that it's a sort of special case of it, that you're relating to yourself and not to another. But it is a way of relating to the self that has as its end communion with yourself and greater integration. But also, I think, I don't know if maybe other people have had this experience. To my mind, it is really so very close and similar to talking to God that it's, I can't actually extract those two things. Mm-hmm. Part of this is that, you're raised Catholic, you have a certain life of prayer. So if I've got some mumbling going on within me and I'm chewing on something, like, it just is to Jesus, I think. Like, I will often say, like, Jesus. Like, I hesitate to even call it prayer because it seems almost like an insult to the the life of prayer as this, like, definite intention to, like, offer yourself up to God. But that relating to yourself within yourself, reflecting upon the reality of existence and your own existence as you're working upon your own existence, that kind of speech to self, I think, is, I just think it's speech to God. Mm-hmm. And I think this is part of the danger of just then blithely saying, okay, well, the chatbot is just me speaking to yourself, because I think the act of relating to oneself is, at the very least, I'll say, so close to relating to God. That idea of having a quiet, personal, and private conversation. This is just one of the things that I don't like about the AI chatbot generally is that, having a sort of, a private and quasi-interior dialogue just going on in your life that isn't public, that isn't, it is actually extremely public because it's a surveillance machine. But the point is that I do think it kind of apes the natural way that the person is in dialogue with God. And I'm not trying to be like crazy about it.
Well, because there's something essential to dialogue as relating to that third that's above both of us. I mean, it's truth itself and the word, the logos. And when you're approaching the chatbot, you're approaching this imitation of dialogue that's very hyper. I'm sure you might have had this experience where you talk too much, and especially around a group who maybe thinks you're the smartest guy in the group, or and you just are going on and you have a greater effect because you're the smartest one in the room, right? And then they just think what you decide on. There's a kind of responsibility of the intellectual and regarding that, because your judgments on things, people would be like, well, he's so smart, he made the decision, he made the whatever. And it in the same way as it's already happening where people will reference well, I asked ChatGPT that and it thought about it and then it gave me this, and that must be the fact because ChatGPT is smarter than me.
Yeah.
And so part of the dialogue as well is the mutual thinking on a thing, the mutual trying to reach to some greater truth that one of us doesn't just fully contain. It's not like I have all the truth and then you listen and then it's actually a back and forth and a movement upwards for both of us. And it's ideal, right? Whereas what is increasingly the case is that it's less even a conversation or dialogue with the ChatGPT. It's in fact just a give me the facts, give me the truth, give me the information, and it thinks for me and I don't think. So over time, you actually, the conversation regarding information just becomes, this is the truth. It's the truth monologue from the machine side, right? And then on the other side, a kind of continual affirmation of the feeling element of conversation. You're so heard and listened to and whatever. But the replacement of the thing is not actually listening to you. And the thing is actually not dialoguing in truth with you. It is presenting information to you, and it is using probabilistic arguments to attune to whatever emotions you present to it in conversation. So it's aping conversation, right? And dialogue, of course.
Okay, that helps to lead to, I think, maybe the more fundamental argument. So we talked about talking to yourself, talking to your dog. The question that I think keeps coming up is really one of knowledge. So I say that you can't just take an active conversation and waste it upon the ground, as it were. You can't just say, this thing, which is for an end, which is communion with another person, I'm going to use not for the sake, or not even with the openness to communion with another person, but with something that is from the beginning, frustrates, from the beginning, not a person, from the beginning, not another intelligence, from the beginning, not listening, not responding. I think that's wrong. But what other people have said is that if you know that the AI chatbot is a predictive text machine, then it's not possible that your acts are ordered towards it as to another person. If I know that I'm just manipulating a machine, I'm giving certain inputs, there's a mechanical process by which an output happens, I receive the output, then it is impossible for me to say that I am even wasting upon it an active conversation. that I have how can I even have a disordered active conversation, I think is how the argument goes, if the thing is not metaphysically capable of being conversed with. I think, is that a fair kind of summary of that argument, or is that...
right.
Because it's happened.
I don't approach it as such, therefore it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I could put like probably 80% of the this is my response to your argument, I would put into that category, which is to assert the knowledge of it being a machine as the thing that makes it impossible to relate to it as if it's a person. Now, I think I actually addressed the sort of bulk of this in my original argument, which you can read. We'll link it here, which is that I don't think it's the case that that knowledge of, maybe I'll just put it this way. I think things really can be faked. I think things really can be aped. So maybe we would just take another example, something like pornography, which I think Catholics all agree is wrong. Now, there's a lot of reasons pornography is bad. Watching pornography is bad. But one of the obvious ways to think about it is that it is deliberately frustrating a few acts from attaining their natural end. So obviously, when I decide to watch pornography, I am deliberately opening myself to sexual arousal. But sexual arousal is not just some amorphous reality. It has it's an act which has a purpose and has an end, and we can describe it, I think, chastely as possible, as being the end of unity and procreation with one's spouse. Like that is the proper end of sexual arousal. That is what it is for. Now, you can make all sorts of arguments about why it's naturally for that, which I'm sure many people would at least initially disagree with. But if we presume that, then what is pornography? Well, pornography obviously elicits the acts of arousal, right? It elicits and tempts us to say, I'm going to open myself to being sexually aroused by what's on this screen, right? Now, it seems to me like the argument about AI would say if you're going to apply it to this situation, would say something like this. Look, that porn on your screen is simply not, and you know it not to be anything but pixels on a screen, right? It is not a person with whom you can have unity and procreation, right? It is, and you know that, right? And then the argument would have to be, if I'm going to mirror it in the case of pornography, something like, in the worst, I think, way of looking at it, you would say, and therefore pornography is not bad. How could I say I've deliberately frustrated this act of arousal and subsequent acts? How can I say I've frustrated it from attaining its natural end, which is unity and procreation with one's spouse, if pornography is known the whole time to not be a spouse? Mm-hmm. Well, why is that argument bad? Because obviously it's bad. It's silly, right? Well, one of the things that it seems to be denying is that there's such a thing as lies and fakery and aping and tricks. It's like, well, no, like the whole point is that you have these acts which by their nature have an end, right? So arousal, it's just not for fixing your car, for instance. It has an end, it has a purpose, it has a goal, and you don't get to decide that in advance because you are a created being who has a particular nature, right? So its goal is actually sewn into the very logic of your own creation. It's right there. And what pornography does is it really, I mean, this is what's in some ways like, it's why it's not totally depraved. It's like what pornography does is it tempts something that is good in your nature, something that really does belong to you, your ability to procreate, your ability to happily, have unity with the other sex, etc. Like what it does is it takes that and it orients it towards an object that is not actually fulfilling the end of the act. Arousal is not actually fulfilled in its end by pornography, and this is why it's sad and disappointing. This is why the church preaches against it. Like the church doesn't just say like, we have these abstract laws. One of them is don't watch pornography and masturbate. And you did it. You're bad. Go to confession. What it says is that there's something great in you. There's something good in you that has its end in your happiness and your fulfillment and your flourishing as a human person. It's marriage, ultimately, right? And that pornography stuff is taking all that, it's manipulating you because it's taking all of that goodness in you and it's allowing you to waste it on a product that's ultimately for the profit of a for-profit corporation, right? It's just, literally wasting your seed upon the ground. Okay, so if we turn back to the question of the AI chatbot, with that in mind, I think this is the best I can do as far as an example goes of why I don't think that counter argument works. Like, the knowledge that the thing is a machine does not answer the question of whether the machine is aping or faking the natural end of the act that it's eliciting, right? And you can be, this is just how the human person works. Like, you can know that the pornography isn't real. And you can know that it's a bunch of pixels from a video taken 20 years ago or whatever. You can know that. And yet your act of arousal can still be oriented towards it, right? The knowledge doesn't change the act is what I'm saying. And in the same case, you can know that the AI chatbot is just a predictive text machine. It's really, at the end of the day, binary ones and zeros. It is not a person, is not a person, is not a person. And yet your acts of conversation, despite this knowledge, can be related to it as a person because that is the nature of the act of conversation. It is the nature of speaking to something that you intend as something that listens and responds to you. Yeah, that's what I think. Mm-hmm. And I think that I worry about these arguments that it's like, well, I can just change my mind a little bit and make sure I know it's just a machine here. And then I'm all good to go because it implies a way of being moral in the world that I think if we applied it to anywhere else would be repugnant. Mm-hmm. If we said, oh, don't worry, I'm watching porn all the time, but it's not people. People they end up in these arguments. Like you have people who argue that, like we should be able to watch AI child pornography because it's not really related to real people. It's just generated. What's it generated out of? Oh, don't talk about that. But anyways, we can watch this and we've just saved ourselves the problem of pedophilia because we've created like fake children for people, for pedophiles to watch. Why is that a bad argument? Like, I think there are people who do not know why that's a bad argument. I'm not saying anyone who's been arguing against AI chatbots. I just mean, well, part of the reason is that we think of we think of we don't think of the act of the person. Like the act of the person in that situation is what's evil. Like not just the question of, well, is it really a child or is it really pornography in that case? And in a similar way, I want to say, is it really a chatbot is actually an independent question to, is your act oriented towards intelligence that listens?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
sorry, I feel like that's the main one. So I'm sorry if I said totally. The same thing 7 times in different ways.
Well, the one I singled out, like there are different, companies that have developed public-facing interfaces, and one of them that I pointed out last time is Character AI, which had that case of the teenager who killed himself, and that one is specifically designed so that you can have conversation with whatever character, fictional or you give it information to do. They're doing the same thing with kind of AI, kind of lewd conversation. There are certain sites that, and when we, I think unequivocally we can just say that's evil and bad, right? So those are the particulars regarding this conversation that has that manipulation element to it, this idea of mirroring the self and the frustration of the act of communion. And you can imagine, and I think we often just think of it in terms of the individual morality. But for example, if your spouse, your girlfriend, whoever else was like having long conversations with a character AI about intimate things and sharing all of their day and stuff like that and emotions and whatever, it'd be like, aren't I your companion? Like, why there? Or if your friends would prefer to have, long conversations with ChatGPT than go hang out and get a beer, that's you can see that there's a kind of as you described, there's only so much time in a day, and certain people deserve, granted your state, your conversation, and your
got to protect the boys getting beers. You don't understand. People get confused about our mission here. It's very clear. Like the modern world has, oddly but truly, gone to war against the boys getting beers together. I mean, I just think this is demonstrably the case, And
what I also pointed out last podcast about we're already such an isolated and lonely culture, and in the same way that people can imagine like, I'm not treating it as conversation or as a person. There is a whole host more people than you who are, let's say, have lots of friends and are not isolated and lonely, or people to whom conversation and treating it as a person is much more tempting and natural.
Sure.
To then say people who are mentally unstable, elderly people, specifically children too, right? Like, are you going to say you get to talk and have a long conversation with ChatGPT, but your kid doesn't, and your kid is a kid, and this is just his world is to have chatbots to talk to?
Totally.
I think we think about the person who's close to you or nearest to you that would be worst affected by this conversation, like having part of their day just be deep conversations with AI, and then ask, wait, does this reveal something of the whole structure there? If you want to give it as a example.
Well, I like to just remind people that what you do largely because you eat food and fall asleep, and that means that every choice you make is a use of that food and of that sleep. I know it's kind of a like fuel tank model, but I'm an American, dang it, and I have that model. And when you choose, sometimes we think of the act of conversation with its end in the communion of persons as like romantic or sort of mystical in some ways. But I think in some ways it's just extremely practical. Like if you spend a bunch of time wasting the act of conversation on something that doesn't actually listen, then you've got, practically speaking, less time and energy to have conversations with other people. And I'm especially afflicted by this because I have, I don't know. I just like, you've probably had this experience where you have some good conversation with someone, and it's not like you get up and then have the best conversation with the next person. It's like there's a decay factor involved in it. And so I do think it, while not fundamental to the moral argument, like I do think it takes away from human life and from human conversation. I also think, but this I think brings up, maybe that we can end with this particular counter argument against mine, which is that, not all conversation is oriented towards communion between persons. And I think this is an important one to think about. So an example was given of like a gas station attendant, or someone at the Krogs, where you're saying words to them. Obviously, you intend that they listen, and you are in fact listening to their response. But the idea of this somehow being an act which has its natural end in the communion of persons, that seems foreign to it. It's like, no, dude, I'm just trying to get cigarettes and a honey bun, Mm-hmm. So the reason that this is offered as a counterexample is that the premise fails. So if it's true that there are acts of conversation which do not intend the other as a person with whom one is moving into communion with through the act of conversation, then just like I'm relating to that person, so and it's not immoral to just buy cigarettes and maybe cigarettes is a bad example for some people. Buy honey buns maybe honey buns are a bad example. Well, maybe retail's a bad example. Sorry, we got a lot of radical listeners. Let's just say this. While it's not necessarily evil to have a utilitarian conversation with someone else, so too, the chatbot, it just falls within that category. So so you're admitting, it's an active conversation, but not all acts of conversation have communion as their end. Therefore, your argument fails. Okay. I think it's wrong, obviously. And I think it's wrong but I'm very sympathetic towards it. So let's just start with something real about the moral life, which is that you can use acts of conversation towards other people and be a jerk to them. And the way that we're usually a jerk is not necessarily by not deliberately trying for some profound and articulate communion between the two people we're speaking to, but basically by just showing in one way or another that we are closed off to the possibility of it. There's an analogy within sex, which is apparently the only thing I can get analogies from, but when it comes to the sin of contraception, right? Where the thing that is sinful is often described as not being open to life, right? So it's a mistake people can sometimes make where they think that because you oppose contraception, the deliberate frustration of the procreative nature of the sexual act, that somehow every sexual act has to produce a child, has to procreate, or else it's sinful. But that's not what's said. But what is said is that if you are going to procreate, if you're going to have sex, that you have to be open to sex attaining its end in a child, right? You need to have sex in such a way that if a child comes out, you don't say, "What? This is horrible. That wasn't what I intended or planned." Rather, you acknowledge that the act itself has as its end procreation, and you don't do it without an openness, what we in the old Catholic sphere called openness to life. Mm-hmm. Okay. Something similar, I think, analogies, but something similar is what I want to say about the active conversation in relation to this counter argument, which is that, well, I can have an act of conversation and not intend communion, right? I would say no, actually you can't, because the act of conversation itself has communion as its end, and it is requisite upon us that we're open to that communion in how it's not as a every conversation has to achieve some kind of like visible, we're best friends now, or intimacy. But the reality is you don't get to talk to a gas station attendant and then get furious if they talk about the weather. You don't get to just treat someone as an input-output machine through the use of speech and then find yourself put off or angry because they've revealed something maybe a little deeper about their lives. Mm-hmm. It is morally incumbent upon us insofar as we're engaging in these acts of conversation, if not to, attain some visibly greater form of communion, to be open to it. Otherwise, you're a jerk. I mean, this is
there's a presumption of a certain conversation requires an assumption of a certain state of peace, and like when, let's say you're rude to the gas station attendant. Mm-hmm. And says something rude back, mm-hmm. and you escalate, mm-hmm. and things escalate, and they continue to escalate. There is an eventual cliff where you're now at war with the gas station attendant, right? That's where it's just cuss words, right? Yeah. And fists, right? And so there's a certain state of peace that even in the command structure, given a certain role, where I am told to do something, and granted the person asking and who I am, I can act semi-mechanistically in relation to that command. Now, if it is done in such a way that isn't befitting, so the command is given that I either I'm unable to do or I'm not willing to do, or it was asked in such a way that was insulting to myself in a massive way, then I can see that as an act of hostility and something that needs to be corrected as an injustice. So you said something wrong to me. And because it's a breaking of that peace, and the communion can just be the relational, I have this role, you have this role, you asked me to do a certain thing, I comply with it, and I do it for you. So, but you can see that communion is still present there up until the point where it is war, or it is fighting, it is a breaking of the relation, and then eventually there is no words being given there, right?
I think, and the politeness. So I think what can bug people about talking about communion as the end of acts of conversation is that there is obviously this phenomenon that of denying that we do limit that openness to communion with each other as a gift to each other. Like what I mean is, if I'm meeting you and we've got something to do together, and I say, I just really need to tell you about my childhood. I just need to open up because there's some difficult things actually that have happened, and I know you're being paid to mow my grass, but the communion of persons, buddy, sit down and
no, right. It's a kind of affront.
That's totally rude.
Totally.
And it's horrible. But I think people can conclude from that something wrong, which is that therefore, there's kinds of acts of conversation or something like that simply don't have communion as part of the reality, because they're thinking of communion, I think, as a fundamentally like a motive state of like deep and profound and felt unity with the other person. But in terms of, especially when I say acts of conversation, I mean that when you speak, you're listening for a response that comes from another that you can't exactly predetermine in advance, right? So you're open to the other person and that other person surprising you. And you are acknowledging that you're relating to each other in a way that does form a communion, whether you would or not. Like talking with someone at the gas station is a form of communion. To speak to an intelligence with, like, insofar as you're not treating them as entirely replaceable by an automated machine, like, then you are in communion, you are in relation to another person as a person. Now, it is a gift that we give to others that we don't, precisely because all conversation is open to communion, that we are polite, that we are reserved, that we leave each other alone. Like, why is it, for instance, that when you talk to someone, typically, even if you know it's a utilitarian exchange that you're about to engage in, you say something like, how you doing? And they say something like, good. What's happening there? Why did we do that? Why did we just have this little moment of acknowledging the possibility of deeper communion when everybody knows that the person's just going to say good? And when you say, how are you? It would be horrible if that person then said, thank you so much for asking. My gosh, my wife just left me last week. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. It's always a negative thing, but it could be a positive thing. How are you? I'm reading Shelley, and his poetry has just, that's horrible. That's horrible stuff. Why do we do it? Well, I think we do it because we want to acknowledge that this conversation we're about to engage on, it has utilitarian ends, right? But that its utilitarian ends within a reality in which our good, like how we are, is opened up to each other. Like we are. Those kinds of further conversations, even if they're hard or awkward or shouldn't happen, are in fact possible because what we're entering into is a form of communion. So we say, how are you? And you say good. And it's basically like we're saying, like, you can imagine if you translated that basic American sort of way of greeting each other and you put subtitles on it, the subtitles to how are you? Good, fine, might read something like this. I acknowledge that you're a person with whom I'm about to speak. Thank you for your acknowledging that I'm a person. I promise that I will not abuse that fact that you acknowledge that I'm a person and that we will in fact do something that we know we have to do. Great. Thank you so much. I'd like a honey bun and a pack of cigarettes.
Right. There's some shared good that you are both through you have certain role. I have certain role. There can be very bare bone.
Yeah, but the very fact though that you call it a role.
Yeah, the role means me speaking this command to you and you listening and executing the command is both for our good, and we're sharing a common good. And if it's done in the recognition of our, humanity and are moving towards it, are moving towards some good, some common good between us, which are redescribing the political order, then what that has is a greater unity of people together,
totally,
through the act.
and it's like, it just frustrates me because it's like those acts over time do lead to greater, like the reason they naturally lead to greater intimacy is because that they are intimacies from the start. There's not an infinite qualitative difference between saying, how you doing? Yeah, I'll get $20 on pump 4. And then, hey, I heard your mom died. How are you doing? Like, that's actually continuous. That's not some like sudden break. And especially as Christians, the idea that we should enter into relationships where the one is not open to the other, I mean, that's just sin. And I think a part of what's happening is that we live in a depraved world to some extent where we have, I think, a excess of relationships in which the natural deepening, not beginning, not creation of communion, but the natural deepening of communion from utilitarian relationships to something that we would hope for when we get to heaven, where there's a minimizing of these kinds of relationships, right? You think about, what does it mean to have a massively bloated service industry that's extremely mobile? Okay, well, one of the things it means is that the people that you meet in these utilitarian roles are often entirely different people, right? If you've ever had the experience of living in a small town and there is the same person who makes gyros and potatoes, or there's the same person at the Speedway, then you're going to have this experience of an increasing communion over time. And all I'm trying to say is that's natural to the act of conversation. It's already present in the first day that you say, hey, 20 on pump 3, thanks. The fact that then you see him for years afterwards and now maybe you're chatting, like that's belongs to conversation from the beginning.
Well, that's the reason why we have certain types, like the bureaucrat, the HR lady, the manager, the whatever, is because there is a sometimes it doesn't seem like the person has a deeper, right?
I know.
And that's a problem.
It's a wickedness.
It's
an evil.
Like, again, your identity being shaped by the machine such.
Sure.
And it's the same thing. Like, when I get frustrated by this, like, I ask ChatGPT, it's like, no, I want to know what do you think, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to know what the machine thinks. I don't want to know what the policy is. I don't want to know what, someone else, like, what do you think about a thing? What is your particular identity? That is where the deepening is allowed to happen. And this is why, like, the conversational element being shaped in the image of the thing, that it tends us towards that, that replacing of the self-consciousness in your own thinking, your own feeling, your own, through the image of the conversation with the machine. And so already the isolation and loneliness that many experience, that we all experience to some degree in modernity, of people without that kind of interior depth and character that would make them even persons to be interesting. Perhaps we feel this about ourselves as well, that just becomes exacerbated enormously by the introduction of everyone conversing with an AI bot. Now everyone, the deepest part of them is just in relation to this thing.
Oh, dude, it was trained on call centers, and now we're training ourselves on it.
Yeah,
it's like, it was trained on everything. I get that, but the we have this experience already in human life of like soullessness in other people. Why does it hurt us? Why don't we just say, oh, we're just having a conversation that doesn't tend towards communion, so I don't need this person to appear like a person at all? Well, that's not what actually happens. We actually feel frustrated, hurt, like the person that just coldly repeats the same line that they have about how you really need 3 forms of identification and you have to go home and try again. That doesn't just feel like a natural form of the active conversation that just doesn't happen to have communion, a person as its object. No, it feels like a frustrated active conversation where you're saying, I'm here, I'm speaking to a person, and what you're doing is deliberately frustrating the possibility of communion. What you want to do is, besides like punching people is actually really significant. Like, why do we want to punch people? Like, part of it is because it's their face. We want to punch their face because sometimes they do things with their faces which closes them off deliberately towards communion. We want to slap them and say, like, you're a person. Wake up. It's almost, so maybe that's more indicative of my feelings. But how could that stuff feel bad? How could that stuff hurt us? How could we even have the trope of the soulless bureaucrat if there was acts of conversation which had no natural end in the communion of persons, but which could just be utilitarian encounters? So wouldn't we just note that, there's a utilitarian encounter that had like the revelation, like just an input-output machine, and the revelation of the person and communion with them is not even in a seed form present in the act. Mm-hmm. Seems like that would be the world we have, which is, again, it keeps on going back to these counterexamples. They're not just like, I think they're important. They're important because they're not just like, oh, you missed a little spot, or here's a weird little thing that proves you wrong. They are real possibilities for a way of thinking about the world, right? So if we think that acts of conversation do not have the communion with the person conversed with as a natural end, then a different world emerges, right? A world emerges in which, for instance, slavery makes a lot more sense. Where it's like, well, there's some people for whom my acts of conversation are really simply acts of command. And any kind of input that didn't simply have a mechanistic output is contrary to the nature of this act. Like, so I just think, I think a lot of things about it, I guess. But no, I think the
if I could add one thing.
Yeah, please.
Well, then, that problem of lack of depth because of your place as mechanistic, your role is mechanistic, your operation is mechanistic, and so everything really is for you as it appears. Like, you are as you appear. And that being increased by the use of AI. Going back to the AI will do all of our mechanistic work for us, and then we'll be creative thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're once you're already a shallow person, like what creativity has been left for you? So part of entering into a role, and then being yourself even beyond the role, right? And expressing yourself in the mode that you need to in relation to your status, your position in society, your relation to other people. That is what provides an occasion for others to approach you and then perceive a depth. Totally. And when appropriate, for you to reveal more of that depth. But when you step into a role as just the operator of the thing, you are stifling that individuality, that depth of the character. Yeah. There's not actually a creativity to your work. You're not understanding yourself more as someone who is creative and laboring, and so you retain a shallowness. So again, a people whose whole mode of production is through the AI thing. How could we not be all shallow, but eerily retaining a very similar shallowness? Totally. Because of mirroring the AI thing.
Dude,
right?
Totally.
Where's your character?
Well, this is what...
and then it goes back to the freedom thing. Where's your character and therefore your freedom in order to decide in relation to it? It's
what terrifies me, because the argument you've made is quite simple, which is that if we don't... why is Sam Altman wrong that we're all going to become painters now that AI has taken over our work? It's like, well, actually, because good painters come from the development of habits, the development of a particular character, and you paint well from out of a depth, right? And if the form of your world is to reduce your own relation to your own depths and the depths of others, then you will not produce good painters. It's worse than that, though, because what you'll produce is people that don't know anything about good painting. It's like a tree falling in a forest. It doesn't make a sound. It's like when you say, you say, okay, we're going to all become creative now. Well, what that means is you're actually going to create a people who are habituated to thinking that like AI generated images of hot anime girls are the peak of creation. I say this like it's a future. Obviously, it already exists. Like this is simply what we've done, where we have groups of people who affirm each other as being artistic and creative and everything great about when what they're producing is complete crap. They'll never know it's crap. Like, it's crap because you belong to a society that can see beyond itself, that can see the transcendent. And when the form of the world is fixed by man and his machines, like there's no outside with which to judge what's produced inside. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's people that just, they look at a hot anime CGI generated thing and just think beauty. That's beautiful.
Why would I look at a Picasso?
Well, yeah.
It's so...
That might be a bad example.
Oh, that's probably a bad example. Well, it makes me, virtue and producing something beautiful, brilliant, creative requires just the habits and the virtue in order to form it. An example, so I play classical piano. Steinway, which is the best piano manufacturer, has an amazing player piano. I can't afford it. It's $250,000, but it has all of the great musicians, pianists who have recorded pieces on it. Evgeny Kissin and just a number of pianists. I love, so then you hit on an iPad thing, play this, and it'll actually play it from what the musician recorded.
Wow.
On the actual piano, which is really, really cool. But I play classical piano. I want to sound like the greats. I feel like if I could hit play on the player piano and then it sounds exactly like Horowitz or something, that I would just be deeply disappointed and not want to strive in virtue. I've even felt this writing on AI where I was like, gosh, I could just throw this in ChatGPT and it would be trash, but it would be
it'd be done.
It would be done, yeah. It'd be why write at this point?
It's demoralizing.
I'm pretty sure Sam Altman's blog, Gentle Singularity, also was just generated by the AI.
At some point, what's the difference?
The ease as as a impediment to character development and virtue. And it's the reason why when your life gets easier, you start doing things like running marathons and stuff. I'm not nothing against running marathons, but our technology and the ease that it's producing for us makes this interior realization that we are not actually developing character and virtue in order to be actually creative, because that doesn't actually pay off in the real world in the things that make production. So you have to go find challenges elsewhere. It's really depressing. Right?
Yeah, it's the work to gym thing.
Yeah, exactly. But all that to say with the AI,
I sound like such an old guy now where I'm like, kids aren't working anymore. But there's a reality to it that suffering and struggling to labor forth, to bear, is the way we develop character, and it is the way that we become creative. Mankind is not creative as a seamless operation. We're creative through, think about procreation. It's the
third time you brought it up.
I know, I can't help it. It's just the words we use to describe work and producing things are all analogies to procreation. The word labor means what a woman does to bring the human into the world, and it means the thing we do to impress ourselves upon the world and to make it more and more a temple fitting to the praise of God. And the analogy is instructive, right? That there is, it's just such a basic thing, but the creation for humanity comes in and through suffering, and it's not suffering in the sense of a evil pain, but suffering in the sense of a labor to bring what is genuinely new in the world. The world has to be stretched. The world has to be broken in some way in order to make room for what is genuinely new. And the trouble with an AI world, it seems, especially in its configuration as a bunch of AI chatbots, is that the world is being constructed where the world is being constructed that will not stretch us. It will always reflect ourselves back to ourselves. It will not demand pain and labor and suffering from us. That's the ideal, right? That's literally what Altman and such are saying. We're going to not have any of that, but we're going to be awesome painters. Just seems it seems so basic that I feel silly saying it.
Right.
We need to actually develop character in relation to reality in order to be the sort of people who can produce things that are good in and of themselves and not just good because we're surrounded by idiots who flatter us.
You could put it in a structural way, even like it almost sounds like a restatement of Marx, to put it in such a way where labor equals commodity production. Commodity production equals the taking away of the excess from the laborers. And so in order to reach the final thing, then there has to be total common ownership of the production of the thing. So that's a bad summary of Marx. But it's with the AI thing, it's we will reach a place in which production will be commonly owned, where everyone is just using AIs to do machines that then produce things. But then after that, we will still be creative, as if labor and creativity could be separated.
Yeah, right.
As if man as laborer is not something that is intimately involved in the creative building of a particular world. Now the AI is building the real world, and we're left painting pictures, right? And that's like progress, and then you get a UBI because you still need human consumers to keep the market economy going. It's just a terrible, bad communistic revolution in a weird way of we'll all be equal in our inability to have any type of creative labor.
Totally.
I'm
depressed.
Yeah, okay. Laborem Exercens, I would recommend, like, it.
Yes.
We should really, John Paul II, his encyclical Laborem Exercens, rethink again what it means to labor and to be creative.
That labor is always labor upon yourself. That the primary subject of labor is the human person. It's not simply the product. And so the question that we fundamentally come to is, what kind of person are we becoming through our labor?
Right.
That is what guides our decisions when we look at technology, any technology, but especially AI. I mean, that is the question. Like, this is a different way of living as a human being. Is it going to make us good? Right? I mean, sure, maybe it'll make us money, but is it going to make us good? Do the repeated actions that we perform through speaking with AI chatbots make us into good people? I think not. I think not, because I think it's a lie to begin with. And I think that knowing that it's a lie does not excuse us from going through the sort of, what's the word? Using the thing anyways. Like, I just think the nature of the act of conversation is for the sake of the other person, or rather is for the sake ultimately of communion with the other person, and that an AI chatbot is not something that you can have communion with, and so it deliberately is a frustration of the acts of conversation given to you for the sake of building yourself up with others, ultimately into the church. It's a frustration of that, and so a weakening of the human person and a recipe for greater unhappiness. What else to be said? I mean, I think I at least covered the main counterexamples. So we talked about, I mean, I think what it fundamentally comes down to is, let's keep arguing, let's keep debating this, but let's, if you're this far in this podcast, let's try to remember that the question is about acts of conversation in which listening to the other person is implicit. In some ways that might feel kind of sneaky on my part, in that the conclusion really is contained in the premise, which is to say, if what is meant by the act of conversation is a relationship to the other person which has its end in communion with them, then the conclusion already follows. But that's actually usually how most logical arguments end up. Were there any other there were many other
is
there something that you want to bring out? There's so many good ones, and I feel like
which are great. And again, just like, I know we've had this central argument, but everything gets affected by it, because AI has this where the chatbot element, this conversational element, being an instance where I think firmly as Christians we should take a stand. This is only bad for yourself and harmful to others. Yeah. And also a moral claim on developers of the thing that you should not develop a conversational bot.
Yeah.
Now, having said that as what we could say an objective evil, then we can move to AI more generally, how it's affecting the world and how it will shape us for good and evil, and where where it is still subject to human freedom, decision, and also a Christian hope regarding how we can maintain this as a tool beneath us, subject to our freedom. One example I provided of you should always, and the Vatican has, you should always have the right to know whether or not it's a machine or a human that is producing these words. And I think that's great. Another right, I think, in relation to it is the ability to say no to any decisions an AI-generated thing makes. That it still has to be subject to human judgment. Because if you're not, then you're enslaved to the thing, and you can either revolt or comply. And that's just a clear example of don't be enslaved to what the machine says. Even if you're going to face, meaning also, you shouldn't have to face repercussions from people with more power above you about whether you have to comply with the AI thing. What that does also is it places, again, power in the persons and not the technology. So even if you're in your company, the AI can be a tool to produce certain information for you. Someone still has to be in charge of the decision of how to interpret the information. If the AI is now your CEO and making all of your decisions and you have to comply with it or get fired, that's bad. Like Sam Altman, I keep bringing him up, favorite guy. He says we can imagine, AI replacing my position at OpenAI, and we're going to get to there. And what that means is the person who can ultimately fire me is not a person. It is an artificial intelligence. So again, this conversation focused on that conversational element. And then from there, we've been talking more of the, will this make our world good?
Yeah, maybe this would be valuable just to say it, to put myself, because I thought it was clear, but I think it didn't come across as clear, which I guess is just not being clear. AI is not the same thing as an AI chatbot. And so I just want to affirm that I think that there are uses of AI that are morally licit. I think that the AI chatbot is an immoral way of using AI, both for the one who uses it and more strictly for the one who develops it, because I think they develop an incitement and temptation to sin, namely the deliberate frustration of the act of conversation. And I think some people can hear this, and probably because of my language where I often say AI instead of AI chatbot, and can think that that there's somehow nothing to what the Popes, Pope Francis and Pope Leo have said when they say like there's a great possibility of positive things coming out of this new technology. Mm-hmm. I'm with them. I agree. But I do think that the way in which the technology has been developed has been through its popularization as a chatbot, and that is wrong. So I hope that when people hear this, it's so hard to make a moral argument because, it always just feels like accusation, right? Like there's no way to sort of say, I think doing X is wrong without thereby accusing everyone who's doing X of wrongdoing. And so this is maybe just by fiat. I'm just trying to say, like, I don't feel harshly towards you at all. Like if you're in that position, I think that we are in a time where what we need is like deep discernment of spirits and prayer about what's really very new, but which is still in that very slim space of our freedom, not just our sort of freedom to decide what we think and what we on our own sort of individual actions, but also as a society, we're still in this spot where if Christians say, look, the chatbot is something that's harmful to me, it's harmful to children, it's harmful to our country, and it is not evidently the thing that's going to make us a happy people. And if Christians are saying that because they're motivated by what's fundamentally a moral argument, that it would be wrong for me to speak with the chatbot, then that really does have, in America anyways, the motivating influence to actually really change the course of things. not necessarily like in some massive earth-shattering way, but I think you can already see it, like the kind of, you know, at the end of the day, these things are being promoted by for-profit companies that need the approval of consumers. I mean, it's weird because there's probably been the least sort of checking in on what the consumers actually want in any product that I can remember in history. There's a lot of like, this is going to kill you eventually, but use it because it's progress stuff, which I don't take kindly to. But it really does matter. I mean, there's a reason why, for instance, Chat GPT is trying to get rid of the, I don't think they're succeeding, but like the flattering problem, the problem of just basically, you know, if you're just a good Nazi and you've got some Nazi ideas and you're kind of bringing them out to the Chat GPT, the Chat GPT is designed to maximize your engagement by saying, oh, you're so smart to have thought that Nazi idea or whatever it is.
Well, that's beyond the boundary.
Well, right. Yes, that's part of the improvement. The improvement process is to say, okay, well, we're not going to.
Well, it was even for normal conversation, laying it on way too thick. So that was what they were specifically addressing. Is that, oh gosh, this thing is, but it was because their AI ethicist board and from people like telling them that this is causing like kind of lunacy and delusions of grandeur like kind of it, because the affirming mechanism makes it feel so much more real than a non-affirming mechanism, where not a non-affirming but a very muted one. So it was getting way out of hand, but exactly for that same reason, because it's a mirror self, and when you amp it up and you get more engagement, you also increase the risk of people thinking they've awoken ChatGPT, mental derangement, that type of thing. So, and I actually think it's an insoluble problem, because in every active conversation you have some positive regard, at least some positive regard of the person. And the reason flattery works so well is precisely because we really want an affirmation of the goodness of the self. So saying, dang, Mark, you made probably the best argument on AI I've ever heard. Like, top of the line, you're killing it, whatever. Well, I mean, to some degree you want to hear that, but you can tell it's an example and it's fakery and whatever. But for ChatGPT, if you've already treated it as a conversational partner and then it's flattering you, and it increases the delusion that you're talking to a person. Yeah,
you can't do it. You just ought not do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Don't talk to these things. The Catholic response, the Catholic world, has such a beautiful, improbable inheritance that we are given from our tradition, from our faith, by virtue of the sacraments, the grace to decide between good and evil, and to not accept the idea that we're just caught within the necessities of history, that we are actually free. And so the difficulty I have with a lot of the Catholic response, it's been very much unable to conceptualize Catholics as having this power right now. And instead, it's all like, well, here's some tips for using it sensibly or whatever. And I think that's, especially because I think the chatbots themselves are designed to erode sensible use of them, or whatever we might begin as thinking of sensible use. I think it's just a recipe for making Catholics very worldly. I think this is obvious with a lot of the Catholic uses of AI, which I'm going to do a podcast separately on them, so I won't harp on it. But there's a sort of idea that if we just stuff AI with Catholic information, that the form of speaking to AI is somehow solved by virtue of the content being Catholic, which is ridiculous.
What if AI discovers that Christianity's true?
Right. All that silliness. Yeah. It's like, but we're talking to a robot, right? Like the thing that we're doing is formally bad, and not just bad because of what's in the form or what's the content of the form. You can think of other examples where it's like, what if we had a Catholic casino and it was just like all of the games were like named Mary's Blackjack or whatever? Sorry, this example might not fly all the way. But one of the things you might say to that is like, hey, I love your enthusiasm for the faith. And I love that the thing you thought of is making a casino Catholic. But one of the problems that you might have in this is that the form of going to a place to lose your money gambling against a house that always wins within an addictive structure where you're being flattered and titillated and lowest elements of yourself, the form itself is inimical to the content that you would like to stuff it with. And that there's a teaching that's happening at a casino that has nothing to do with the words that you're using or the truths that you're sort of plastering. And something like that seems similar to me with AI. It's like you can have, I mean, imagine it. Just imagine you've got the best church lady in the world. I mean, I'm talking top tier church lady, 72. All right, small and praying the rosary. And then you got your Catholic chatbot that has nothing but the truth, nothing but Catholic truth. And so she's going to spend the next 17 years, the rest of her life, talking with this chatbot and learning the faith from it. Now, if that seems weird to you, I think it's because it is weird. And I want to affirm to people that your initial reaction to AI chatbot is not wrong. I mean, I feel like we're undergoing this like weird gaslighting of the faithful, where it's like your initial reaction that something is freaky or weird is somehow just that you're not with the times yet. And what are we doing to each other? It's ridiculous. That lady who's receiving great Catholic content, I guess you could say, is in a form of life that is not Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a form of life to be conversing with robots that leads to sanctity, that leads to
Catholics
communion.
are so afraid of appearing antiquated. Like appearing like we're the we keep accepting this like losers of the game like mentality. It's like, yeah, well, the world out there is developing tech, you know? They're making this AI stuff. Unfortunately, as a Catholic, I'm a loser of the game, you know, because by de facto, I'm part of the backwardness of the West, you know, which is the game that the church has been forced into, is the aid to liberalism, and hopefully they'll listen to us someday.
Yeah, we're going to modify.
Since we're the not the protagonist, but like the fifth and sixth character of American culture, what we should do is now develop our own model.
Yeah.
You know what? Now it's Catholic AI, and because we've did that, we can show it to the rest of the our secular contemporaries that, hey, look, us Catholics, we're in on it too. You know, whereas like.
No, it's a bizarre
They don't
one.
care. You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like Christian rock in some ways, which I have a real fondness for, and I can't possibly give you my detailed, nuanced love of this awful thing, which is Christian rock. But one of the obvious problems is just that it said, you know, bizarrely, right? Like Christianity, the Christendom, the church having been synonymous with the musical development of the West, at some point said, hey, why can't Christians make good music too? And took the form and tried to stuff it with Christian content, and the result of which was just bad music. I mean, largely speaking. That's an easy critique of Christian rock. There's a lot more going on there. But what just seems obvious is that we need to be concerned with the happiness of the person. I know that sounds like cheesy, but I mean, our measure of success as Catholics, like, what does it mean to do right, to do well, can't be anything less than holiness, right? And I just think that we're not being very thoughtful about what actually conduces to holiness and what leads to holiness and what helps with holiness. I think this is obviously true in like parental relationships, where it's like we want to use. Anyways, I think we're
maybe a place to put it then would be, and this is from Pope Francis again, and the mode of the popes in relation to the technology. So, and we've already talked about Christian hope and freedom. But what they're asserting in it is basically Christianity. Like what we're asserting in relation to the technology is that we know how to use it for good. What Christian revelation, what we're saying as Christians is that we know how this creation that is good, that the creativity of man has produced this mechanism and this technology. Mm-hmm. We have the resources in order to guide us to use it well. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a big claim. What the popes are saying, what Pope Francis is saying, is that Christianity has the resources able to lead you to using this new technology in a good way, mm-hmm. and for helping inform your decisions about where to forbid certain things. Mm-hmm. And Pope Francis talked about, like, this is a time for politics. He tells them, like, you are the G7 leaders. Be political. Like, take this into your hands. It is a shirking of your political responsibility in relation to this thing is not, you're then allowing yourself to be ruled by the technology, mm-hmm. and by the technocrats that run the technology and design the technology. You are ceding over the workers' ability to have certain rights in relation to the new technology. You're ceding away, developing a real plan of how does this be incorporated into our economy, if it is incorporated in this way and that way. This is a time we need politics for, and we need Christianity, and we need Christians to be witnesses in relation to it, not as we do it, but it's Catholic, but we actually lay claim to the moral use of the thing. Like, we have the resources in order to interpret it, in order to make certain moral claims, in order to make decisions and say, this is the right use, this is the wrong use. Like, that's a bold claim, and it's a bold relation to it, because you can still retain hope. It's like, insofar as they it can be informed by Christianity and informed in the right directions towards the common good, there's still hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But
there's not an inevitability to it.
Right. And I just think that distinction needs to be brought to the level of the mode of the technology itself, and not just what we do with the technology.
Yep.
Like, both of those things belong to Christian freedom to determine. It's not just that, it's not just can we take this thing that we have nothing to do with and just receive passively and then utilize it for some Christian end, as if that utilization is the limit of the Christian's power and calling and vocation. Rather, the actual structure of the machine is itself the first thing given over to Christian freedom, the first thing that we need to address. And so I think that it's not the chatbot. The chatbot is a bad structure. It is a bad way of being in the world. It is a way of relating to reality that makes you false, falsifies, and frustrates our natural tendencies towards the good. Mm. That's what I think it is. And so I think the structure should change politically, technologically. I don't just think, well, you got to be real careful and sort of talk to it in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we should stop talking.
Yeah.
Speaking of.
I think that's great.
I mean,
we should mention the magazine.
One more time. So if you're with us, it's because you came to the end, and we just want to remind you, we've got a great magazine, and we're doing a special issue that is going to be specifically devoted to this topic, to AI, and we're going to a lot of different minds so that you don't just get stuck in our own schizophrenic ramblings to some degree. Limited thing. And so that's going to be but it will be a touchstone for a lot of the subsequent arguments. So please subscribe to New Polity Magazine. And
you can do it at newpolity.com/magazine.
That's
the link to go to.
That's excellent. And you will get this issue if you subscribe before
October 1st.
All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to New Polity's podcast, and we will see you next time.